Virus, crisis, protest, conflict. It's like you couldn't make this stuff up if you tried. But what if it's all made up? What would you do differently if you were told today we really are in the Matrix? Elon Musk believes we are literally in a simulation. And this is how he explains it.
40 years ago, we had Pong, like two rectangles and a dot. That was what games were. Now, 40 years later, we have photorealistic 3D simulations with millions of people playing simultaneously, and it's getting better every year. And soon we'll have virtual reality, we'll have augmented reality. If you assume any rate of improvement at all, then the games will become indistinguishable from reality. Just indistinguishable. Even if that rate of advancement drops by 1,000 from what it is right now, then you just say, okay, well, let's imagine it's 10,000 years in the future, which is nothing in the evolutionary scale. So given that we're clearly on a trajectory to have games that are indistinguishable from reality, and those games could be played on any set-top box or on a PC or whatever, and there would probably be billions of such computers or set-top boxes, it would seem to follow that the odds that we're in base reality is 1 in billions.
And when Larry King asked scientist and astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson what he thought about Elon's view, this is what he said.
Like Mr. Musk thinks, are we living in simulation?
I find it hard to argue against that possibility.
Meaning?
Meaning, you look at our computing power today, and you say, I have the power to program a world inside of a computer. Well, imagine in the future where you have even more power than that, and you can create characters that have, for example, free will, or their own perception of free will. So this is a world, and I program in the laws that govern that world. That world will have its own laws of physics and chemistry and biology. Now, you're a character in that world, and you think you have free will, and you say, I want to invent a computer, so you do. Hey, I want to create a world in my computer. And then that world creates a world in its computer. And then you have simulations all the way down. So now you lay out all these universes and throw a dart. Which of these universes are you most likely to hit? The original one that started it, or the countless simulations, the daughter simulations that unfolded thereafter? You're going to hit one of the simulations. So statistically, based on that argument, which first appeared by a philosopher from Oxford named Nick Bostrom back in the 1990s, right when computers were becoming real enough to think this through, it's hard to argue against the possibility that all of us are not just the creation of some kid in a parent's basement programming up a world for their own entertainment. And then every time something weird happens in the world, some disruptive leader takes charge, and I wonder if that programmer just got bored and had to stir the pot. So they throw somebody in there just for their own entertainment. For me, that's some of the best evidence that we live in a simulation. Because this happens every time there's peace and tranquility in the world.
But if it's true, what can we do about it? If, like the Truman movie, or was that, we're in that.
Yeah, well, he can try to escape by going in the Truman movie to go through the barrier.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you were programmed by somebody, yeah, no.
So both believe by odds of 1 billion to 1 that all of this is one big simulation, and they're not alone. The final theory Stephen Hawking published before he died is that we live in a holographic universe, where what we see is projected from some other dimension, and our 3D reality is an illusion. Before the Big Bang, there wasn't nothing, there was still space, just no time, until someone pressed the play button. His co-author of his final theory, Belgian cosmologist Professor Thomas Hertog, explains time is fundamentally coming out of some other state for which we have no words. The odds of us being in a simulation were given by Oxford philosopher Nick Bostrom in his paper, Are You Living in a Computer Simulation?, in which he gives this equation. He goes on to show, given the inevitable growth in technology and computing power to a post-human civilization, where humans can create human-like simulations themselves, that at least one of the following 3 propositions must be true. FP, the fraction of post-human civilizations, is close to 0, which would mean that we also will go extinct before we create our own simulation. Or F1, the fraction that are interested in running simulations, is close to 0. And if that were true, we shouldn't be showing any interest in simulated worlds, but we do. Or FSIM, which is that we are living in a simulation, is close to 100%. And as the odds of 1 and 2 are most likely not to be true, then number 3 is almost certain to be true. Rich Terrell, a scientist at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, goes deeper with their hypothesis, showing that the universe is designed more like a simulation than not. Because 1, everything is designed in finite blocks that follow rules, just like computer code. Number 2, we now know with relativity that all reality is relative, and everything, including the rules of time and light, is designed around each observer, just like in a computer game, instead of an objective reality. And 3, we now know with quantum physics that even randomness is built into the system, which is great for a simulated world, but would serve no purpose in a non-simulated one. Terrell concludes, quite frankly, if we are not living in a simulation, it is an extraordinarily unlikely circumstance. So what do you think? Do you agree, or are you skeptical? Post your thoughts in the comments below. And then let's get on to the bigger question, why does this even matter? Well, let's start with another believer in the simulation, Steve Jobs. Before he died, he organized everything about his funeral, right down to the gift he gave every person who attended when they left, wrapped up in a brown paper bag. Salesforce CEO Mark Benioff said, "I knew that this was a decision that he made, that everyone was going to get this. Whatever this was the last thing he wanted us all to be thinking about." In the bag was a book. It was the one book Steve carried with him everywhere he went, and he reread the book every year that he was alive. The book is the autobiography of Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. It's a first-hand account of a yogi's journey to self-realization, and it's about waking up from the illusion of Maya, where the subject appears as object, the creatures imagine themselves to be creators. So what is Maya? It's a simulation. In Sanskrit, it means the illusion. As the book says, a man closes his eyes and erects a dream, which on awakening, he effortlessly dematerializes. Similarly, when he awakens in cosmic consciousness, he will effortlessly dematerialize the illusion of the cosmic dream. To tear the veil of Maya is to pierce the secret of creation. Now, while the simulation is not about religion, almost every ancient religion or philosophy has at its core the illusion of reality. Over 2,000 years ago, Plato's allegory of the cage is his metaphor for how we believe we are in reality, when in fact, we are simply in a projection. He told that story 2,000 years before Stephen Hawking wrote his final theory on the holographic universe. And this is the same illusion that Edgar Allan Poe meant when he wrote, "All that we see or seem is but a dream within a dream." And the same illusion that Albert Einstein meant when he said reality is merely an illusion, albeit a very persistent one. And while scientists try to prove or disprove whether we really are in a simulation, and as Silicon Valley billionaires fund their work, the bigger question is, what would you do if you realized this was all a game? And the truth is, you'd probably act a little more like Steve Jobs and Elon Musk. Number 1, you'd probably play a bigger game and live a bigger story, because if it's all a simulation, what do you have to lose? Have you ever had a dream where you realize you were in the dream? That's when you realize if you're in a dream, you may as well make it fun, and you may as well aim for the moon. Number 2, you'd probably not take yourself so seriously, because if you're not really real and you're just an actor in a play, wouldn't you rather be one having fun or being courageous than being anxious and stressed all the time? Number 3, you choose what kind of game you want to play and what kind of movie you want to be a part of. Why pick a tragedy or a soap opera when you could choose a comedy or an epic adventure? As for the bad hand you've been dealt or the crazy things the world throws at you, if it's all part of the game, you wouldn't take it so personally, because every great game needs dragons and villains. In fact, what if exactly this belief that we're all in a dream is what helps Elon Musk and Steve Jobs to make their dreams come true? And ultimately, Elon Musk doesn't care if you think he's wrong or right. As he says,
I think I'd rather be optimistic and wrong than pessimistic and right.
so whether you believe we're in a simulation or not, why not give it a go, at least for a day, and see if it makes you think differently? What kind of game will you play? What kind of person will you be? What kind of story will you live? And what kind of legacy will you leave? Because if this is all one big multiplayer game, if you don't like the game, maybe, just maybe, you can change it.